There's something really nice about being an uncle. Not too long ago, I found this on Facebook Marketplace and I purchased it that when my niece and nephew come, they would have something to do. And the lawn tractor was getting a little slow for them, and this would kind of pick up the pace a little bit. Little did I know it had been severely modified. It says it's a doodle bug, and so I thought that was kind of cute. It originally came with a 2.8 cc motor. This now has a 6.5 stage 1 Predator. I've been told that they race these things, and when it originally came, it had ball tires, and I suspect it had been raced. This thing has been a lot of fun. Now, when others have come, one of the things that I'll notice that they'll do is they'll take opportunity to ride in the trails in the backyard. This upsets my wife. Not a good choice. And so there are liberties that we have that can be abused that don't really take into consideration the thoughts of other people. We're so captivated in our newfound liberties and freedoms that we're not paying attention. This can segue right into our Christian life as well. We ought to be very, very cautious of this. I'd like to share with you 4 principles by Sinclair Ferguson, a Scottish theologian, and I think that they will kind of bring all of this into focus. The first principle is that Christian liberties must never be flaunted. And it says in Romans 14:12, "Hast thou faith? Have it to thyself before God." The NIV says it this way: "Whatsoever you believe about these things, keep them between yourself and God." So the context is talking about dietary laws, and here we see that Paul encourages those to not flaunt their Christian liberties. One of the questions you might want to ask is, does this really build up others? In Romans 14:19 it says, "Let us therefore follow after the things which make for peace and the things which may edify another." And so this is a focus on others and not really a focus on ourselves. So we're not flaunting our liberties that it's all about us. We are beginning to focus on others and realize it's important to edify others. 1 Corinthians 6:12 says, "All things are lawful unto me, but not all things are expedient." And then he goes on to say that he will not be brought under the power of anything. Now this is something really to think about, that does your freedom and the ability to do all these things and not be trapped under the law, does it really liberate you, or does it begin to enslave you? So he points out that the subtle truth is that Christians who have to exercise their liberty may be in bondage of the very thing they insist on doing. That's something to really think about. Now, Christian liberty, for the second principle, means that you don't have to sort out everything before you can bring them into fellowship. Now, this is one thing that we need to think about, is that Christ accepts people in their sinful state. He brings them in. Yes, he does begin to justify them, but they do have all the warts and everything they came with, and so we ought not to get uptight about those things, realizing that God is going to work those things out in process, just like he's working them out in our lives. We are not to be the judge of them, and the scriptures are very clear. There's one judge, and that's the Lord Jesus Christ. It's very clear, principle 3, that we ought never to be a stumbling block to other Christians, Romans 14:3. And principle 4, we ought not please ourselves. And this is a principle that lets us understand that oftentimes we see our liberty as our rights, when in reality that liberty provides us to be more like Christ himself. And so we ought to be more like servants. Instead of demanding our rights, we ought to realize that Christ forfeited all his rights, and we need to have more of a servant's heart. So, as you see these principles, yes, he does provide some liberties, but we need to be wise in using those. This provides a tremendous amount of freedom and liberty as you ride around, but there may be some places you ought not ride. It may not be good to ride in my wife's backyard. It may not be good to ride this thing down a city street. But you get out into some open land, and there can be some real liberty out there and create some tremendous amount of enjoyment. You can even use this for others and allow others to use it as well. We ought to think about the liberties that the Lord has given us in our lives, that they ought to edify others, they ought to accept others, and they ought to be used to be a servant unto others. It's a very different view when you think of this, and I know that we have equated Christian liberties with our American liberties as if they're the same. I would challenge you to look at it and look at it a little bit differently. In the devotional book, I'd like to read Romans 14:19. Let us therefore follow after these things which make for peace, and the things which also may edify another. May you do that. May God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. Share these videos if you like them.